Transactions of kindness is a concept that encapsulates the very essence of what makes us all human. To act with kindness is to be unconditionally caring, compassionate, and generous. Without it, the world would be a very unfamiliar place. Unfortunately, we have started to see kindness corrode in the face of fear, giving way to hatred and division. So I began to wonder whether our regression could be cured by the idea that kindness, like most things in life, can be transacted or exchanged. But I'd like to start by sharing a moment of when I was first confronted by a severe lack of empathy and how it set me on a path to discovering that a surge of kindness could be the antidote we also desperately need. As many of you will remember, on the 7th of July in 2005, our nation was attacked by the most deadly act of terrorism our history has ever faced. 4 coordinated attacks struck public transport across London, from buses to tubes. Over 700 people were injured, with 52 people losing their lives to an act of terror and weakness by a group that transacts only with fear. Many reported them as Islamic terrorists, but I don't even believe they deserve the right to be recognized by religion. Never mind one that is so peaceful and pious. They claim to be enacting scripture, but in fact, their cowardice was nothing other than pure evil. Now, I grew up only a stone throw away from where I do this talk today, and one of my earliest memories was watching 7/7 unfold on the television. I still remember the sense of fear within the family around me, the feeling of sadness within my own heart of seeing innocent lives lost to something truly evil on streets that looked just like mine. A few mornings later, I woke up with that same fear within me, fearful of walking to school with my mother, fearful of going to a place where another attack could happen, fearful of the sadness I'd be seeing in the eyes of my classmates. And I remember that day walking to school, seeing my neighbors share that same fear. It's a remarkable thing, fear. It can either break us or bring us together. But on this day, even as a young boy, I believed it would bring us together. That was until I walked into my classroom. I will never forget that moment. One day, a friend and a classmate, but on this day, sat in the corner, treated as a suspect, as someone who was to blame for sharing only one trait with those evil men: the color of my skin. All I wanted was to be comforted. All I needed was to be treated as an equal. All I wanted was a hug. All I needed was kindness. Instead, I had a growing fear within my own heart, and it wasn't the one that I'd woken up with, the sense of evil coming after me. It was instead the fear of being separated, isolated, and alone. To make things worse, 3 of the 4 terrorists lived in the community where I grew up. We have all witnessed conflicts around the world triggered in the aftermath of moments like 7/7. Imagine what they did to my community as a response to the most deadly attack in British history. In a community that was already desolated by poverty, you'd think that our leaders would instill a sense of hope and unity. But no, it was division, hatred, and fear that they spread. But this wasn't an upbringing that I escaped, for all my experiences ignited a fire within me that still drives me to this day. And although I did have an upbringing that lacked opportunity, hope, or privilege, I realized at an early age that the only way to make change happen was for my community to be heard, for people to see their kindness and love. In every step of my journey, including the step to talk to you all today, I have been fueled by the desire to help the unheard have a voice, to help the kids in the community where I grew up have the opportunity to be different, to be heard, not just to survive, but to dream. But I'm also fueled by the fear of another generation being oppressed, worse yet persecuted, if anything like 7/7 was to ever bleed our nation again. For it is inevitable, bad things will happen. But imagine for a moment if that community, my community, were heard, not for their trials or tribulations, but for their kindness. What would the world look like if they were heard? But let's take a moment to fast forward to the present to compare the effects with something all of us are so familiar with. For we live in a nation and a world that was attacked by an indiscriminate pandemic only a few years ago. It took the lives of our loved ones, regardless of their age, race, or religion. In that moment, we all lost so much. But as you can all remember, as though it was yesterday, in a moment where we had to distance and isolate, our nation became closer. Neighbors began knowing neighbors. People started helping those in need. All of us took to the streets at 8 p.m. on a Thursday to clap for a healthcare service that is already vastly underappreciated. We stood together. We united. We did not divide. What we saw in COVID is that we have a choice. In times of dire circumstances where the foundations of our society are attacked, where our neighbors and our loved ones are losing their lives, and we have a fear of losing ourselves, we have a choice. We can overcome hardship through kindness. But yet, in our response to 7/7 or 9/11 for that matter, in those moments of division, we chose isolation and we gave in to fear. When we compare our responses to both crises together, we start to realize that we have a choice when we are attacked. We can either isolate and divide, or we can overcome and unite. Having a choice means we can be different. However, all of you are probably wondering, well, we feel the same. We feel that same hatred for what humanity looks like in these desperate times, but what do we do? I mean, what can we do? Well, I'd like to share a story based on my experiences and travels to the most underdeveloped and impoverished parts of our world, so that together we might be able to find that solution. I have fueled my passions for helping the unheard have a voice through philanthropy and charitable work. I've raised hundreds of millions for causes around the world, and I've also been on the ground in some of the most war-torn and fractured communities. For example, a couple of years ago, I was in Mogadishu in Somalia, and as some of you will know, it's strife with genocide and corruption, meaning it's nigh on impossible to support them with aid without it falling into the wrong hands. However, I had the honor of being part of a mission that did make it through from Cyprus, delivering essential aid, including food, water, and medicine. But when I arrived, I was met with the reality of what constant conflict had done to this beautiful country, and it broke me. I was only there for a couple of weeks, but to be honest with all of you, I was scared. I was frightened, just as when I was a little boy, seeing 7/7 unfold on the television, seeing fathers taken away from daughters, daughters taken away from mothers, mothers killed in front of their sons, and sons handed machine guns to fight. It was truly terrifying. But on one of the nights, I happened to walk into one of the tents, and I was met with the most remarkable sight. Hundreds upon hundreds of women and children sat in a big circle with a fire in the middle. I'll never forget the feeling of the fire against my skin. But what I remember more than anything was the love radiating from the people around me. In that moment of complete brokenness, these women and children, they were singing, they were smiling, they were sharing love. Can you imagine? Despite all that they had faced, it was love that healed them. We could throw all the money and aid in the world to solve the issues of Mogadishu, Ethiopia, Haiti, or Yemen. But what keeps us strong is kindness, it's compassion, it's love. But when we look closer to home, the same just isn't true. When was the last time you went out into your community and did something good, something selfless, something not for you, but for those who need it? I put my hands up. Outside my professional life, I can't name you the last time I did a selfless act. But that does not mean we are bad. It just means we must do better. And yes, it's true, during the pandemic, we saw the rise of charitable good deeds. But why is it, when we are disproportionately affected by hardship, may that be poverty or fear, we seem to forget how to give back, how to help those who struggle most? What I learned from my time in Somalia and helping communities come together in their times of need is that transactions of kindness, as I said, is the antidote we also desperately need. But how do we do that? Well, let's say for a moment we all came together. to do one good deed, not in our day or in our week, but in our month. We could help pack bags for the elderly, or serve food to the homeless, or help a refugee child with their homework, or even donate our old clothes so that someone else can feel warmth tonight. When we look beyond our own suffering, you start to realize there is so much good to be done. I mean, imagine what the world could look like if we were to all make an effort to be selflessly kind just once in our month. Not only would we all lead happier lives, but with just one of these genuine actions multiplied by all of us together, we could deliver 7 billion transactions of kindness, inevitably creating a kinder and more beautiful world. Can you imagine the power that we could yield? However, some of you will believe that kindness should never be a transaction. So I ask you, look around. Look at the world we live in. Where was that kindness for that little boy sat in the corner of his classroom? Where was that kindness for the millions that go hungry every night? For the thousands that walk our street in fear? It is simply not enough to just believe in goodness. We need action, and transactions of kindness helps us do just that. For when we start to increase the frequency of our transactions from once a month to 2 or 3, we start to sharpen our instincts so that the next time we face fear, we can intuitively begin to choose unity rather than division, protecting love while deflecting hate. And like any transaction, there is a return on your investment. But unlike money, there is no law of diminishing returns. Instead, we become intuitively stronger, better, and kinder with every transaction we make. And so the next time we all face another collective great loss or great pain, our transactions will act as a constant reminder that the best way to overcome fear is to continue delivering with kindness. For even in the face of desperate times, if we can continue transacting with such kindness, our community will become a beacon of hope. And not only will you cherish the love we will feel for each other, you'll be so surprised by the love you'll feel for yourself. For there is no greater power in the face of fear than love. I often think back to that little boy sat in the corner of his classroom, and I start to think about the millions of little kids just like him. But when I imagine the impact of transacting with kindness, I start to see hope and strength for the generation that is to come. So while I urge all of you to go out there, spend your every day in being good people, let's start by dedicating to one moment in our month where we transact with a little kindness to deliver a genuine action, and let's watch it grow from there, 1 month at a time. Together, we can overcome fear and help those most unfortunate live the life that they deserve. And with your kindness, not only will our generation grow stronger, but we can end the suffering felt by that little boy and the millions just like him, so that they can also begin to dream. Maybe then will our world begin to heal. Thank you.